Sunlight pours through the tall bay windows of my parents' formal dining room, piercing the air with golden ribbons, settling on the polished wood, and playing with glints in the crystal glasses, turning them into tiny prisms that reflect the morning in hundreds of shining points. The table is set impeccably. My mother always placed special importance on this, even if only family was gathering. A familiar weight of tradition slowly takes hold of me as I adjust the burgundy linen napkin on my lap and inhale the rich aroma of my mother's stew, in which wine, bay leaf, and the pungent smell of caramelized onion are mingled. My father stands at the head of the long mahogany table, and, as always, his movements are precise, almost ritualistic. He slices the meat into thin, even pieces, as if drawing a line along an invisible blueprint, and carefully places each slice on the porcelain platter, the very one from the set he reserves only for Sunday dinners. "Dad, save me a small piece," I ask, knowing in advance that I won't be heard. He nods, but, as usual, puts a generous portion on my plate without even looking in my direction. "You're too thin, Adele," he says dryly, and at this phrase, repeated year after year, something inside me seems to click. It was always like this. He still sees me as the girl who doesn't know what she wants and needs his guidance. I'm already opening my mouth to remind him that at 38, I am perfectly capable of deciding how much to eat myself. When the door to the hallway swings open with a bang, letting noise, wind, and chaos into the house, Vanessa bursts in, like a storm, as always. Beside her is her husband Leon, tall, slightly stooped, with an expression of patient doom, and 3 children who instantly turn our quiet meal into a fairground. Backpacks fly to the floor, chairs screech, voices overlap. The youngest whines that she wants to sit next to Grandpa, and the eldest demands that no one touch his spot. "Sorry we're late," announces Vanessa, not even pretending to be guilty. Her eyes are shining, and in that sparkle there is something unsettling. Too much excitement, too much intention. "Awful traffic near the mall," she adds, and Mom immediately jumps up to hug the grandchildren, not asking any further questions. "Were you shopping before dinner?" I ask, but my voice is drowned out by the children's squeals and joyful exclamations. Dad catches Vanessa's eye, and a brief, almost invisible exchange passes between them. A slight nod, instantaneous but eloquent enough. Something tightens in my chest. I know that look. Since childhood. It always appeared just before it turned out that I was the only one not in the know about family decisions. "Well, now we're all here," Mom says, slapping her palm on the table. "Guglielmo, finish serving while it's hot." And the familiar symphony of Sunday lunch begins. Plates are passed around. Someone asks for salt, someone for the wine sauce. Mom asks me about the new architectural project as if she's genuinely interested, and Dad is already enthusiastically discussing the stock market with Leon. The children fuss over the vegetables. I smile politely, and everything seems to be returning to its familiar track, until Vanessa's voice cuts through. "So," she says, overriding the noise, "next week we're moving into your Lakehouse. We have foundation problems." My fork freezes in midair. "What?" I exhale. "It's standing empty anyway," Father interjects in an offhand tone, but his eyes are wary, as if he was expecting this scene. "I get the blue bedroom!" Vanessa's eldest son shouts joyfully, bouncing on his chair. "That's not fair. Mom said I could have it," his sister protests, and their argument fades into the background because I suddenly realize the children have already chosen their rooms. This isn't improvisation. This is a decision made in advance, thoroughly discussed without me. "Your Lakehouse has plenty of space," Mom adds softly, as if that explains everything. And all I can hear is the rush of blood in my ears. 6 years. For 6 years, I've been restoring that house, putting into it not just money, $420,000 to buy it, $95,000 for renovations, but myself. 3 years ago, when the floodwaters were knee-deep, I alone dried out the floors, replaced the drywall, while they were cruising the Caribbean. That house became my sanctuary, the place where I learned to sleep without fear again, where in the mornings I could just look at the lake and breathe. Family should help family, says Vanessa with a voice that carries a carefully rehearsed phrase. We would do the same for you. The foundation work will only take 7 months, Dad chimes in, and I see Leon stubbornly studying his plate, avoiding my gaze. The silence becomes thick, palpable, like before a thunderstorm. I slowly place the napkin next to my plate, a quiet gesture, but all heads turn. Something inside me shifts. The air becomes cold and clear, as after a long sleep. And I understand. The moment has come. Adele, you've always been so particular about your things, my mother says, brushing aside my objection with a light, almost careless wave of her hand, as if that closes the matter, leaving me no right even to a pause. This is what families do, Adele, my father adds, and his voice takes on that condescending note that has made my breath freeze since youth. It was in this tone he spoke to me when he thought I was being unreasonable. And this is how he could bring any discussion to its knees, making the other person feel like a stubborn child. We help each other, he concludes, as if delivering a verdict. Vanessa says nothing, but her lips are already twisting into that very smile, smug and subtle, which grows wider with every second. She knows she is winning and is anticipating my defeat like dessert after a successful dinner. For how many years have I watched this scenario? She takes, I give, and our parents affirm that this is how it should be, because family doesn't keep score. Only the score was always kept, just not equally. She received attention, forgiveness, justification, duties, explanations, and the eternal be the elder one, give in. But not this time. I slowly reach for my purse hanging on the back of the chair, feeling the air in the room grow dense, wary, as if the silence itself is holding its breath. I take out a crisp folder of heavy paper from inside, place it neatly on the table, and without raising my voice say, "The contractors are starting work on Monday." I open the folder and the rustle of pages sounds louder than I would have liked as I show them the renovation contracts, city permits, estimates, and signatures, everything neatly arranged, every number, every date, every signature. Mine. A full renovation, I clarify, not taking my eyes off Vanessa, will take 9 months. Everything, down to the last nail. A silence falls, thick and sudden, like a storm over the lake. Father's knife freezes over a piece of roast, the glass in Mother's hand stops halfway to her lips, and Vanessa's smile vanishes so quickly, I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. I take a sip of water, feeling the coolness down my throat, surprised by the calmness with which my hand raises the glass. The crystal catches a sunbeam and throws tiny rainbows onto the tablecloth, sharp as ice crystals. But it seems no one but me notices them. The folder lies between us like a weapon, loaded with facts and my right to finally say no. No one moves until Vanessa's quiet, piercingly disbelieving voice is heard. "You can't be serious?" She looks at me as if I suggested demolishing her house. "We've already given notice on our apartment. Where are we supposed to go?" I take another sip of water, buying time, and scenes from our family chronicle surface in my mind one after another. All those small debts, minor invasions that I forgave, not out of weakness, but out of a foolish belief that the balance would someday even out. When she borrowed my car for the weekend, and I got it back 2 months later with a crack in the windshield that she couldn't remember where it came from. When the $3,000 temporary loan magically turned into an $18,000 debt that no one ever mentioned again. When I came home early and found her in my own shower, and she laughed and said, "Oops, I thought you wouldn't be back until evening." "You'll have to find another place," I say, feeling a new firmness, almost metallic, enter my voice. "The contractors start on Monday." "Adele," Father intervenes, carefully setting down his knife, no longer pretending the dinner is continuing. His voice takes on that cold, corporate tone I knew from childhood, the one he used with clients who needed to be persuaded without losing face. "Be reasonable. Your sister has 3 children and a house with foundation problems." "Yes," Mom adds, nodding vigorously. "You can't expect them to live in an unsafe..." House, I finish for her. I don't know, Mom. I just expect them to find a solution to their housing problem that doesn't require my participation. Vanessa narrows her eyes, and I see her searching for Father's gaze. That same look, that invisible agreement between them I've seen so many times. It was the same when I turned 16 and found out my college savings were gone. They went to pay for her wedding. Then, too, they said, "Family helps." Then, too, everyone looked at me as the selfish one who dared to be outraged. I know how it will be now, an attempt at pressure, then pleading. And indeed, Vanessa is the first to change her tone. Her voice breaks, becomes softer, almost plaintive. But we've already started packing. The truck is coming Monday morning. Mother, as if on stage, leans forward, touching Father's hand, and her whisper is filled with deliberate tragedy. This will break your father's heart. My phone vibrates on my lap. A message from Marco, my contractor. All materials delivered. We're ready for Monday morning at 7 sharp, and a warm, confident calm spreads through my chest because while they were setting an ambush, I was preparing. The security company finished the installation last week, the permits are submitted and approved, and I followed the instructions. Because for me, the house is not just property, but a sanctuary. The place where I gathered my strength after the divorce. Leon, still studying his plate, tentatively suggests, "What about furniture storage? Maybe in the garage?" And I calmly reply, "The garage is being converted into a home gym, because every corner of my house has a purpose, and I am not ready to turn it into a storage unit for other people's things. It all comes down to nails and concessions." Vanessa hisses, "You'll regret putting renovation above family," and her voice is tinged with the familiar melody, tears appearing on command. Dad lowers his voice and throws out a threat about inheritance, and Mom raises her tone, talking about children who will be left homeless. The old pressure strategy I'm tired of. I neatly fold the napkin on my lap, each fold a symbol of the boundary I've drawn for myself, and say firmly, "Mine," implying the house, the contracts, and the right to manage my own life. A familiar recognition passes over Father's face, his business mantra coming back like a boomerang. I gather my purse and the folder with permits and signatures, stand up. Father orders me to sit down, his voice harsh, but in my chest there is a calm I haven't felt before, and I reply evenly, "I respected my contracts. You should respect my boundaries." Vanessa's eldest son looks confused. I heard his friends asking about my blue lakeside bedroom, and so I state, "That is not your bedroom, nor your lake house." Then, without looking back, I walk to the door, my steps echoing distinctly on the floor. The house fills with protest, but the door closes behind me with a decisive click. The autumn air fills my lungs. I get into the car. The phone already shows 12 missed calls from Dad, and only when I'm alone on the interstate do my hands tremble on the wheel from the adrenaline shock. But the inner resolve remains. The memory of the nights 3 years ago when I alone restored the house after the flood strengthens me. I stop at a parking lot, call Marco, confirm the security system is operational, ask him to place dumpsters in front of the garage gates as a barrier against unauthorized access, ask him to check the cameras at all entrances and reinforce the locks. Small things, but together making the house impregnable. Marco replies, "Already planned," and his voice carries support. On the way home, as the sky above the highway turned indigo and headlights shimmered on the wet asphalt, I allowed myself to think that the Lakehouse had become more than a project for me. It was the book of my life, the room where I, for the first time since the divorce, allowed myself to breathe without looking back. And now every decision I made, every morning and night invested, is a testament to my independence. I imagined how in the morning Marco and his crew would put up the first supports, how the cameras on the gates would light up, and how I would know. From now on, I guard my labor with actions, not words. A message comes from Vanessa. "Dad is furious. Fix this now." But I switch the phone to silent, place it on the seat, and drive not to the Lakehouse, but to that apartment where I learned to sleep peacefully without checking the locks 3 times. Tomorrow they will escalate, but for the first time in our shared history, I am ready, and this feeling is unshakable. Monday morning arrived with the deafening roar of an engine that had no place in the silence of the lakeside dawn. I stopped by the kitchen window, not having brought the coffee mug to my lips, and watched as a huge truck, gleaming in the sun with a fresh polish, slowly crawled along the narrow gravel road leading to my house. The burgundy logo on the side of the vehicle exactly matched the shade of Vanessa's lipstick that evening at our parents' table. And from this coincidence, a grim foreboding flared within me. The phone vibrated, hitting the stone countertop, the fifth call from Father since dawn. I muted it without even looking at the screen and picked up from the windowsill that very folder of documents that had lain before them as proof of my independence. Now its weight felt different. Not papery, but heavy, like armor. When I reached the property, Kyriako and his crew were already working with the precision of military engineers. A line of orange cones stretched along the road, marking the boundaries of the construction site, and I heard a second engine start up somewhere behind the pines. I saw Ray standing at the entrance. His stern, weathered face remained impassive, but his clenched jaw suggested readiness for trouble. He nodded to me and said quietly, "They arrived about 10 minutes ago. Claim they have permission to enter." The truck door swung open, and Vanessa jumped out, blinded by the sunlight. Her sunglasses were pushed up on her forehead, her face flushed. Anger, irritation, humiliation mixed in it, as always when the world didn't obey her plans. "What the hell is going on here?" she shouted, pointing at the excavator by the porch. "These people won't let our movers in." I stepped forward, not getting too close, so that her voice and my reply would be heard by the whole crew. "As I told you a week ago, the renovation starts today," I said, pointing to the documents in the transparent folder. "The house will be closed for the duration of the work. It's uninhabitable." "Are you serious?" Her voice cracked, and I saw several workers exchange awkward glances. "We've already given notice on our lease. We have nowhere to live." I took an envelope from my bag and handed it to her. "This will help. A storage unit contract paid for 6 months in advance. There will be room for your things." She looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "Storage? We need a place to live, Adele, not a place for boxes." "Your housing is not my responsibility, Vanessa," I said calmly. "Foundation problems don't appear overnight. You had time to address them." Her eyes narrowed, fury flashing in her pupils, but she found no familiar crack in me to exploit. She turned sharply and headed for the house. "I still have a key," she threw over her shoulder. "We'll just bypass your little tricks." "That won't work," I replied and followed her. She inserted the key into the lock and turned it. Silence. Tried again, with force. A neutral mechanical voice came from the speaker by the door. "Unauthorized access attempt detected. Owner notified. Security service alerted." My phone immediately rang, vibrating in my hand. Vanessa spun around to face me. "You changed the locks," she shouted, her voice trembling with anger and helplessness. I nodded towards the small cameras under the roof. "Standard procedure. After past incidents, the police are notified. Protocol." Her face contorted, as if a polished mask had cracked, revealing something untamed and primitive, what had always been hidden beneath the layer of gloss and confidence. "You can't do this to us. We're family." "Family respects boundaries," I replied, surprising even myself with how even and calm those words sounded. The phone rang. The security company, right on schedule. I answered briefly, reporting the alarm was a mistake, not a threat. When I hung up, Vanessa was already by the truck, waving her arms furiously, shouting something to Leon, who sat hunched in the passenger seat, avoiding looking my way. Kyriako approached, removing his helmet. "We're ready to start, Miss Bonello, as soon as you give the word." I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air cut my throat, and took the tablet from him to sign. "Begin. I need the master bedroom demolished by Thursday." He nodded but hesitated for a second, looking at me intently. "Your sister doesn't seem like she'll give up. Should we expect interference?" I looked at the road where the burgundy truck still stood, as if blocking the path to the future, and replied slowly, almost with a smile, "The interference has already happened. Everything else is just echo." Before I could respond, the truck's engine roared with such force that it echoed dully in my chest, and instead of reversing, as common sense dictated, it jerked forward abruptly, crushing the cones with its tires and swerving onto the lawn I had so carefully tended all summer. The vehicle stopped 20 feet from us, and I watched with a painful sensation as the tires crushed the thin stems of the ornamental grasses I had planted last spring, when I still believed peace was possible in this house. Sharp commands came from the truck bed, the ramp slammed down, and the movers began unloading furniture one by one, as if on cue. Vanessa climbed out of the cab, a triumphant winner's smile on her face, her steps full of confidence, as if she owned this space, this air, this morning light. "Since you refuse to be reasonable," she shouted, making a wide gesture with her hand, "we'll have to store our things here temporarily. The yard can handle it until you come to your senses." The first item rolling down the ramp was an antique mahogany dresser, the one that once stood in our grandmother's bedroom. Its polished surface met the lawn with a crunch, leaving a deep dent in the soft earth. I watched as the movers brought out armchairs, boxes, even old mirrors, and felt not anger, but a weary, cold realization that all this was predictable. Leon followed them, gloomy, not raising his eyes, as if ashamed of what was happening. I didn't move. Instead, I took out my phone and selected a number saved the previous evening. "Lakeside Auction House?" I said in an even voice, looking directly at Vanessa. "This is Adele Bonello. Yes, proceed with the pickup as agreed. All proceeds to the foster care program." I paused and watched the expression on my sister's face change from triumphant to stunned. "Yes, they can be here within the hour," I added, and ended the call. "What auction house?" Vanessa demanded, her voice trembling, but not from fear, from an attempt to regain control. "The one I contacted yesterday, after dinner," I replied calmly. "I anticipated you'd try this." I pointed to the pile of furniture growing on my lawn like an inappropriate monument to the past. Kiriako, holding a tablet, cleared his throat slightly. "Miss Bonello, we need to start the demolition. Work around the furniture or—" "Not necessary," I said, handing him the signed final approval forms. "Anything not under lock and key is being removed today. The rest proceed." The rest of the day went according to plan. Construction equipment hummed, workers exchanged short phrases, mountains of furniture grew on the lawn, a symbol of what was and what would no longer be. Vanessa alternated between threats and tears, now demanding we stop this madness, now begging for more time. In the end, Leon, exhausted and embarrassed, carefully took her by the hand and led her to the car, promising they would return tomorrow to sort this out. But they didn't return tomorrow, or the day after, and only on Wednesday morning, when the air smelled of raw drywall, did I hear the call I was waiting for. I stood in the former master bedroom, where workers were removing the last sheets of wall, exposing beams and old nail marks. "You heartless!" Vanessa's voice literally exploded through the phone. "The auction truck took everything. That was a family heirloom." I stepped outside to hear better over the construction noise and said calmly, "Then it shouldn't have been on someone else's property." Her screams came through the receiver, sharp, chaotic, but inside me, no irritation or anger stirred. On the contrary, I felt a steady, quiet calm that required no effort. It had become natural, like breathing. "I kept all the documents," I said when she finally fell silent. "Photos of the furniture left on private property, video from the cameras recording the attempted entry. The police have already issued a warning." Silence hung on the other end, long, full of the realization that the rules had changed. "Mom and Dad will come to talk some sense into you," she finally hissed, and I even heard her voice tremble. I looked at my watch, then at the foreman, who, catching my glance, gave a thumbs up. Everything was on schedule. "Let them come," I said quietly. "Let them see what they can't take from me." When I hung up, a sledgehammer broke through the last wall of the bedroom, the one that was once meant to be hers. Sunlight poured into the open space, scattering in golden streams on the fresh sawdust. I breathed in the air, saturated with wood and dust, and for the first time in many years, felt I was breathing for real. The security alarm notified us of approaching cars. I stepped onto the porch with the blueprints in my hands, watching as my parents' car slowly parked next to the construction equipment. The walls of the master bedroom were collapsing with a rhythm akin to music. I stood in the light pouring through the exposed beams and, adjusting my hard hat and safety glasses, smiled. "Miss Bonello, where do you want the drywall stacked?" Rico shouted. "Along the east wall," I replied, pointing to where my grandmother's sideboard once stood, "and cover it if it rains." My parents get out of the car like cautious explorers, setting foot on uncharted land for the first time, where every crack in the ground and every piece of concrete holds a threat to their accustomed order. Father's face turns to stone as he surveys the construction equipment neatly arranged on the lot where a perfectly manicured lawn once lay, and Mother's hand automatically rises to her face, covering her mouth, as if this gesture can protect her from the scale of change she witnesses. "What have you done?" Father's voice cuts through the air, competing with the screech of a circular saw rhythmically cutting boards nearby. His words echo between the yet unraised walls. I walk towards them calmly, feeling the gravel crunch under my heavy boots, and in this stride there is a resolve I always lacked in conversations with them. As I said, 9 months of renovation, everything down to the nails. I remind them as we meet by the temporary stairs leading into the house. They follow me, stepping slowly over the threshold, and their footsteps echo hollowly on the bare wooden floor, where old parquet recently gleamed. Before them is an open space where, instead of a cozy living room, there are only beams, exposed wires, and the remains of a fireplace that was once the heart of the home. "This is madness," Mother whispers, and her voice is almost lost in the noise of the contractor's radio, from which guitar riffs of classic rock emanate. "You've ruined everything." I turn to her, feeling not anger rising within me, but a quiet strength. "I'm restoring everything," I reply, this time by my rules, my vision, my schedule. Father surveys the ravaged space with the air of a man accustomed to assessing losses. His businesslike cold gaze slides over the blueprints, boards, toolboxes. "Adele, this is too much. Stop now, and we can still work something out with Vanessa and her family." I can't help but laugh. The sound is dry, ringing, reflecting off the open studs, as if the walls and the air understand how late this offer is. "That's not happening, Dad." His face darkens, and I recognize in him the very storm that once made me yield without a fight. "You never understood family obligations," he says coldly. "I can cut you out of the will." The threat hangs in the air, heavy and calculated, as always. 6 months ago, these words would have torn me apart, but now I just nod. "You already did," I reply calmly without raising my voice. "After I refused to sign off on Leon's failed business deal last year." Mother gasps, putting a hand to her chest. Father has paled, as if my words have revealed something he didn't want to remember. "Vanessa told me herself," I continue, taking the rolled-up blueprints from the temporary table. "During one of her requests for money, she said you rewrote the will to protect the family assets. Her wording, not mine." Mother's eyes fill with tears, the very manipulative ones that once disarmed me instantly. "Adele, please, think of the children." I turn to Rico, not letting myself be drawn into the old game. "How is the children's reading nook coming along?" I ask. Rico looks up from his tablet and smiles. "All good. The built-in is already framed. Should match your drawings exactly." Mother blinks, not understanding. "For the foster program," I explain calmly. "The one that got the $12,000 from the furniture auction." Father narrows his eyes, his voice becoming cautiously sharp. "Vanessa said you sold family heirlooms." "Furniture left on private property," I correct him. "The auction house documented everything down to the last detail. It was an open process." Mother grabs Father's arm. "Guglielmo, she's making us look terrible. People are talking." I take out my phone, open social media, and show them Vanessa's deleted posts about the homeless family and comments full of admiration that the furniture went to a good cause. Public shaming doesn't work when people know the truth, I say, putting the phone back in my pocket. Father straightens up, his shoulders squaring. The corporate negotiator in him awakens. His tone becomes softer, almost reasonable. Let's discuss options. Perhaps we can find a compromise. I notice this shift, slow but real, from demands to dialogue. The renovation is on schedule, I reply and nod towards a worker carefully removing old family photos from a section of wall scheduled for demolition tomorrow. But I am willing to help Vanessa find housing that fits her budget. Mother's tone changes from haughty to politely cautious. That would be appreciated, she says. At that moment, my phone starts vibrating, notification after notification. The security company reports no new intrusion attempts. The auction house sends an official receipt for tax purposes. Rico sends fresh photos. The back porch is almost done. Standing amidst the skeleton of my house, I see Father involuntarily linger his gaze on the blueprints. His eyes betray respect, though his lips remain pressed together. He recognizes good planning, sees the thoughtful logic, the very kind he always demanded from others. Have you ever had to take everything apart to reclaim it? I ask, looking at him, then at Mother. Sometimes you have to dismantle everything to the foundation to build something authentic. Before they can answer, my phone rings. Leon's name is on the screen, and I step back into the shadow of a column to talk quietly, because I feel I need to finish what I started. He speaks softly, almost in a whisper. Adele, I want to apologize for my role in all this. I should have intervened sooner, told the truth. And I hear in his voice something I haven't heard before, regret and uncertainty that seem to have come too late. Outside the window, my parents are walking back to their car, their postures less tense than when they arrived, and I think aloud, sometimes the hardest foundation to pour is the one that supports our boundaries, but it's the most important. And Leon silently agrees, because he understands we're talking about something more than a house. Behind me, the workers continue to transform the sanctuary, one nail, one beam, one boundary at a time, and as they slowly reassemble the house, an image forms in my mind of my parents' formal dining room, where the amber evening light casts long shadows on the Persian rug. The table is set in a way that evokes déjà vu. The same burgundy napkins, the same crystal glasses where light plays in prisms, and the same tension that hung over us like a storm front. 3 months into the work, I accept the dinner invitation, knowing a test awaits us. Your mother made her signature roast, Father says, slicing the meat with precision, his voice carrying the businesslike tone of a man deliberately easing into a difficult conversation, and I, smoothing the napkin on my lap, notice the extra place settings and ask, "Are we expecting guests?" But Mom and Dad exchange those very glances, silent messages that have long foretold only disappointments for me. "We thought a family dinner would be nice," Mom says, and puts a generous portion on my plate, as if softening something. Then the doorbell rings and Father's shoulders relax slightly. Reinforcements have arrived. When Mom leaves, Dad leans closer and in a low tone informs me that he spoke with Gentiloni, that Vincenzo, and that he considers my actions cruel. And I take a sip of water, remembering how 3 years ago, when I was alone battling the aftermath of the flood, there wasn't a word of help from anyone. Father's reply is interrupted by footsteps in the hall. Mom returns with Pastor Adriano, whose opinion always carried weight. He sits nearby and with a gentle smile says, "Your mother mentioned you're busy with renovations," and I merely confirm, a transformative process, because that word captures the essence. Mom, having returned, sets the table with a smile, reminding us of family harmony. Dad nods and says some decisions can be adjusted for the common good, and Mom whispers about the children who supposedly miss their aunt, which should have softened me, but instead my fingers only grip the fork tighter. The old model is playing out, a united front, implied moral responsibility, and the quiet assumption that I am the problem to be solved. Dad continues, "Last year, the foster parents opened their home for 8 months during renovations, and it brought them closer, and each such reminiscence gradually builds pressure, every comparison a subtle reminder of what good families do. I say this because I know the price of resolve and the price of putting yourself first without destroying those you once loved and continuing to help, but on your own terms. And so it will be. Every example, every implied comparison, a subtle reminder of how good families behave." I reach for my purse and take out a tablet, its smooth surface cool to the touch, like the very reality about to become irrefutable proof of my words. "I'd like to show you something," I say calmly, without challenge, but with that shade of confidence that Brooks, no doubt. Unlocking the screen, I open the first photo, my Lakehouse surrounded by scaffolding, as if in a cocoon protecting it from the outside world. I swipe my finger across the screen, showing a series of images, interiors turned to chaos, beams crossing at angles, the echoing emptiness where the breath of change is audible. "That was the first day," I say, moving to the next frame showing workers in hard hats, with tools and tired but determined faces. "And this, just a week ago." Pastor Adriano leans forward, genuine astonishment in his eyes. My God, what a transformation. The last photos indeed make the former house hard to recognize. Where dark coziness and heavy drapes once reigned, light now pours in. Floor-to-ceiling windows open up a serene view of the lake reflecting the sky. Oak-beamed ceilings, the warm hue of wood, custom-made floors, every element chosen with attention that could be called love. "This is the master bedroom," I explain, stopping on a picture where a soft morning floods the room with golden light. The balcony was a challenge, but for a sunrise like that, every effort was worth it. Mom brings her fork to her lips but doesn't complete the motion, frozen, as if she sees not just a room but something she didn't expect. "It's completely different," she whispers. "That was the point," I reply, swiping further. I open a new folder, the project timeline. "Here's the schedule created 5 months ago," I say, showing a chart with precise deadlines and stages. "And this is the post-renovation valuation, a 40% increase." A barely perceptible shadow of interest crosses Father's face, and I notice the analyst in him awakening, the man who can respect a good strategy. "This wasn't a refusal to Vanessa," I say evenly, setting the tablet aside. "It was the protection of my own plans. I started them long before her crisis." I swipe the screen again, opening a folder with photos that still make my chest tighten. "Here's what was left after the hurricane. You probably don't remember. You were on that Caribbean cruise then." The photo shows knee-deep water, floating furniture, walls already showing mold, a house barely standing. $28,000, emergency repairs, I list, laying out invoices, receipts, contractor reports in a row. "And here are the messages I sent that month, asking for help. The response was, everyone was busy." Mom's face pales, her lips tremble. Father studies his plate as if he's found salvation in it. "Respecting boundaries isn't cruelty," I say quietly, feeling the silence between us become palpable. "It's adulthood." Dad's shoulders slump, an almost imperceptible movement but containing more acknowledgement than any words. For the first time, I see not an authoritative patriarch, but a tired man who understands he has lost not an argument, but an old power dynamic. "I should have helped with the repairs," Mom says, and her voice lacks its usual sternness, only weariness and, perhaps, something resembling remorse. I look up. For the first time in my life, it sounds like an apology. But at that moment, the door swings open and Vanessa flies into the room, flushed, her eyes burning with indignation, expecting to see the familiar scene. Me, the accused, our parents, the judges. Her steps slow as she notices the judges are silent. that Pastor Adriano is quiet, and I am sitting calmly before me not emotions, but evidence. "What's going on here?" she asks, her voice trembling with bewilderment. "Mom said you were discussing the Lakehouse." "Correct," I reply, looking straight at her. "We're discussing how I'm restoring my space. When the renovation is finished in 6 months, you can come for a visit, with prior notice." I take a thick envelope from my purse, a formal housewarming invitation. "March 12th. I hope you'll come." The question remains in the air. Who will come and on what terms? I stand up, thank them for dinner, and leave, feeling a lightness spreading inside me. In the rearview mirror, my parents' house grows smaller, melts into the twilight. Clouds have gathered over the lake, and somewhere there, in the half-light, the lights of my future house, my choice, my truth, are flickering. The renovation continues, like life, step by step, beam by beam, layer by layer. And for the first time in all my adult years, I feel no guilt, no sense of debt, only a quiet certainty that firmness is not cruelty. It's a position. Sunlight skims across the water, breaking into thousands of tiny glimmers, and these quivering sparks dance on my bedroom ceiling like frivolous ghosts of past anxieties, now dissolving in the peace of the new morning. 6 months have passed since that Sunday dinner when I last sat at my parents' table, and the Lakehouse has finally become what I envisioned. Not just a space of wood, glass, and light, but a reflection of that internal order I had been moving towards for so long. I sit on the balcony, cupping my hands around a warm mug of coffee, and listen to the water breathing quietly by the dock, to the wind rustling the leaves of the old oak I refused to cut down, despite the contractor's advice. In this morning silence, there is not a single voice demanding my attention, no requests, no expectations, only a clear silence in which one can simply be. Below me, the kitchen gleams, copper and reclaimed wood shining in the morning light. The smell of coffee mingles with the scent of fresh timber. Last weekend, I hosted a dinner for the first time. Not a family one, not an obligatory one, but my own, with friends whose laughter filled the rooms where an anxious silence of expectations once reigned. We drank wine from glasses I chose myself and talked about everything but the past. The room where Vanessa was once supposed to sleep is now a small gym, a place where I remind myself daily that self-care is not a luxury or selfishness, but a form of survival. My phone vibrates softly, a message from Kyriako. "Still can't believe we pulled it off. This is the best project I've ever led." I smile, remembering how she looked at me with disbelief when I first told her my plan to take the house down to the studs. "You want to demolish a perfectly decent building?" she asked then, and now she brings clients herself to see the result, always with permission, of course. The doorbell pulls me from my thoughts. Through the camera, I see my parents, Dad shifting his weight from foot to foot, Mom holding a tiny plant in a clay pot. Their first visit since the renovation was completed. There's no tension in my voice as I press the intercom button. "Come in." The door opens softly, and they enter as cautiously as if afraid to disrupt some invisible order. It's nothing like that evening when it all began. Dad looks in surprise at the high ceiling. Mom's gaze lingers on the dining table where, according to Vanessa's plans, her children's textbooks and pencils should have been. "Adele, this island..." Dad's voice is unusually quiet, almost bewildered. "It's simply magnificent." Mom places her gift on the side table, a small jade plant, green and alive, like a symbol of something that can still be grown if one stops arguing with the soil. "Truly remarkable," she adds. I serve them coffee in handmade mugs, watching as their eyes glide over the space where every detail tells a story of labor and freedom. Mom stops by the photo wall. My mountain hikes, architectural sketches, sunset pictures. There are no family portraits, and she notices, though she says nothing. "This is who I've become," I say calmly, answering her unspoken question. Dad nods, his gaze stern but softer than before. "You've created something outstanding." He echoes Mother's words without realizing it. A warm, almost awkward silence hangs between us, an acknowledgement grown on the soil of once rigid boundaries. Later, Kyriako joins us, laughing and bringing a bottle of champagne, and soon a courier arrives with a basket from the security company for our most valued client. A message appears on my phone from the auction house owner. He sends photos of the community center where Vanessa's furniture now stands, in a bright hall full of children and books. The program director cried. He writes, "It's their first set of furniture that actually matches." I don't have time to reply. A new message arrives from Vanessa. "I'm sorry about the furniture. Can we talk?" I look at the screen for a long time, feeling a light sadness without reproach. Then I type a short reply, "Dinner next month. Bring dessert. No talk of moving." Boundaries, after all, are not just for protection, but a way to draw closer, safely. When the guests have left, Father lingers by the door. "Respecting boundaries isn't cruelty," he says quietly, and I hear my own words, once spoken from the heart, in his voice. He smiles, tiredly but warmly. That is adulthood. When evening falls, I walk down to the dock, where the lake reflects the sunset, painting the sky in deep shades of gold and lilac. The water ripples quietly, lulling the day to sleep like a child. I look at my reflection, steady, calm, not blurred by the wind. The world doesn't demand self-denial, I think. It demands respect for one's own limits. And here, in this house where every brick was laid with intent, where every crack is filled with experience, I finally find what I sought for so long. Not approval, not forgiveness, but peace. Deep, mature, like the lake under the evening sky.